The grand palace ship of the Valari Empire hung in orbit above a dying star. Its silver-white towers rose like frozen lightning, glowing softly against the dark. Inside, crystal halls shimmered with light that seemed to come from nowhere. Captain Elias Ward stepped through the docking gate, his boots clicking against the glass-smooth floor. He was the first human in history allowed into the royal court of the Valari. A dozen guards, tall and pale-skinned with silver eyes, surrounded him. They didn't speak, they didn't smile. Elias kept his expression calm. Years of diplomacy had taught him that first impressions mattered more than most people realized. He adjusted the dark, formal coat of the United Earth Alliance and walked forward with steady steps. His escort led him through wide corridors decorated with silver banners. Valari art lined the walls, images of stars being born, great fleets sailing through space, and tall figures standing in proud poses. The Valari were an ancient people, and they wanted everyone to remember it. They reached the grand audience chamber. The doors opened silently. Inside was a wide space with a high dome, light streaming from crystal shapes above. In the center sat a throne made of smooth black stone. Upon it was Princess Serenia Valari. She wore a gown that shimmered, like liquid silver. A crown of white crystal rested lightly against her long, dark hair. Her posture was perfect, straight, still, and regal. Her silver-gray eyes studied Elias with a calm intensity, as if she was looking through him. At her right stood Ambassador Jorath, a tall Valari elder with thin lines of gold across his forehead. Jorath's gaze was colder than Serenia's. The guard stopped. Elias took 3 more steps forward and bowed low, as the Valari custom demanded. "Captain Elias Ward of Earth," Serenia said. Her voice was smooth, clear, but carried no warmth. "You stand before the Valari throne. Speak your purpose." Elias straightened, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Your Highness, I come with the greetings of the United Earth Alliance. Humanity wishes for friendship, trade, and mutual defense. We know your empire faces challenges in the outer sectors. We believe we can help." Jorath stepped forward slightly. "Humans have little to offer the Valari. Your fleets are small, your worlds are young. Why should we consider your request?" Elias smiled faintly, careful not to seem arrogant. "Because, Ambassador, we adapt. We survive. And when we give our word, we keep it." There was a small pause. Serenia tilted her head slightly, still watching him. "We will see," she said, simply. The meeting continued with formal questions and answers. Elias spoke of human technology, strategies, and willingness to stand against threats together. Serenia listened but gave no sign of approval or rejection. When the audience ended, the guards escorted Elias to the guest quarters. The rooms were elegant, smooth walls, floating lights, and a view of the dying star outside. But Elias hardly noticed. His mind was on Serenia. It had been 8 years since he first saw her, not in person, but across a crowded hall at a galactic summit. She had been younger then, still a princess in training and surrounded by advisors. Even then, she had carried herself with the same calm, quiet strength. He had felt something he couldn't explain, a mix of admiration, curiosity, and something deeper. Over the years, his work had brought him news of the Valari and their princess. He had seen images of her speaking at councils, leading ceremonial processions, visiting border colonies. Each time, the feeling returned, stronger. And now, here he was, standing in her world, speaking to her face to face. He sat by the wide window, looking out at the star below. It was an old sun, its surface darkening with age. Streams of glowing gas curled away into space. The Valari palace ship floated close to gather energy before the star's final collapse. A soft chime sounded at the door. Elias rose. When it slid open, a Valari servant entered, a young woman with pale skin and dark markings along her temples. "Captain Ward," she said in accented English. "Her Highness sends this." She handed him a small crystal sphere. Inside it shimmered faint light. "What is it?" Elias asked. "A record of your audience," the servant replied. "So you may review your own words. Valari tradition." Elias thanked her. When she left, he turned the sphere in his hands. It was warm to the touch. Setting it on the table, he activated it. A small image of Sirenia appeared above the sphere, her voice repeating the words from earlier. He listened closely, studying her tone. To most, her voice might sound cold, but Elias noticed tiny changes, a slight pause after his answers, a faint shift in her eyes. She was curious. She was listening. He leaned back in his chair, letting out a slow breath. "Sirenia Valari," he murmured to himself. 8 years, and you still have no idea. The thought was bittersweet. He had never spoken of his feelings. To anyone. In diplomacy, emotions were dangerous. They could cloud judgment or be used against you. Yet here, in this quiet room, with the stars' light washing over him, he allowed himself the truth. "I have loved you for years," he whispered, almost as if speaking to her image. Far away, in the high tower of the palace ship, Princess Sirenia stood by her own window. She was thinking about the human envoy. Most humans she had met before were loud, eager to impress, or too quick to agree. Elias Ward was different, calm, direct. And when he looked at her, it was not like the others. There was no fear, no blind admiration, just steadiness. She touched the edge of her crown lightly. "Strange," she said to herself. "Very strange." Outside, the dying star flared, sending a wave of golden light across the palace ship. In its glow, 2 very different hearts, one human, one Valari, had begun to move closer, though neither fully understood what it would mean. The next morning, soft blue light filled Elias Ward's quarters. The Valari palace ship simulated daylight with shifting colors in the walls. It was beautiful, but strange. Humans liked sunlight through windows. The Valari seemed to prefer a glow that came from everywhere. A gentle tone sounded from the door. When it slid open, Ambassador Jorath stood there, tall as ever, his long robe trailing across the floor. "Captain Ward," Jorath said with a thin smile. "Her Highness has agreed to let you observe our morning council. I will escort you." Elias knew this was both an invitation and a test. "I'm honored," he replied. They walked through the silver halls. The walls themselves shifted slightly, showing moving images, star fields, distant planets, flowing water. Elias tried not to stare too much, though part of him wanted to. Stop and study every detail. The council chamber was a wide, round room with a raised platform in the center. Valari nobles stood in curved rows, each wearing robes of different colors. Princess Sirenia sat at the center seat, her posture as perfect as before. When Elias entered, dozens of silver-gray eyes turned toward him. He could feel the weight of their judgment. The meeting began. Nobles spoke of border disputes, supply shortages, and the growing threat from the Cortec. Elias listened carefully, trying to understand the Valari way of debate. They spoke in measured tones, each taking turns, and they valued long, poetic phrases. At one point, a noble turned to him. "Human envoy," the noble said, "how would your people deal with a rival empire that raids your border colonies?" Elias stood. "We would send fast patrols to protect our people. We would form alliances, and if attacked, we would fight, until the enemy could not return." There was a low murmur among the nobles. To Elias, it was common sense. To them, it was blunt and almost aggressive. Serenia raised a hand and the room fell silent. The human answer is direct, she said. Different from our own approach, but worth noting. The meeting continued, but Elias noticed some nobles watching him with narrowed eyes. Jorath gave a faint, unreadable smile. After the council, Serenia invited him to join a private lunch in the small crystal garden. The garden was unlike any he had seen. Instead of plants, tall crystal formations rose from the floor, glowing with soft colors. Streams of light flowed between them like water. "Do you dislike our customs?" Serenia asked as they sat across from each other. "Not at all," Elias said. "They're beautiful, just different from what I know." She tilted her head slightly. "Your people speak quickly. Your answers are short. Valari tradition values words as a kind of art." Elias smiled. "Humans like to get to the point, but I can try to be poetic." One corner of her mouth almost curved upward. "I would like to hear that someday." Before they could speak further, Jorath entered the garden, looking displeased. "Your Highness," he said sharply, "I must report that the human envoy violated protocol this morning." Elias blinked. "What?" Jorath's eyes were cold. "You stood to speak without being formally granted the word. In Valari law, that is an offense." Elias took a slow breath. "I didn't know. I meant no disrespect." Serenia's gaze moved between them. Her voice was calm. "Leave us, Ambassador. I will consider this." Jorath bowed stiffly and left. When they were alone, Serenia looked at Elias. "You did break a custom, but I believe it was an honest mistake. Our rules are many." "I'll learn them," Elias promised. "All of them, if that's what it takes." Her silver-gray eyes met his. "Why would you go to such trouble?" Elias hesitated, then chose his words carefully. "Because I believe our peoples can stand together, and I want to make sure nothing I do weakens that chance." There was a faint pause. She nodded slowly. "I will see that the charges are removed, but be careful. Some here would be glad to see you fail." Later that day, Elias was invited, perhaps by accident, perhaps on purpose, to attend a Valari celebration in the Hall of Stars. The hall's ceiling was a vast holographic sky, showing the galaxy in real time. Valari dancers moved in slow, graceful patterns, their silver robes flowing like waves. Musicians played long crystal instruments that sent shimmering notes through the air. Elias watched, fascinated. The music was unlike anything he had heard, calm yet full of emotion. Serenia stood at the far end of the hall, speaking to a group of nobles, but her gaze found him briefly, as if to check whether he was enjoying himself. When a Valari courtier approached and asked if he wished to try a small crystal harp, Elias agreed. The harp was light and delicate, with strings of glowing light. His first few notes were clumsy, and nearby nobles laughed softly. Instead of stopping, Elias chuckled and tried again, making up a simple melody. It was rough, but cheerful. A tune from Earth, one his grandmother used to hum. A strange thing happened. The room grew quieter. Valari eyes turned toward him. The cheerful human tune was simple, almost childlike, but it carried warmth. When he finished, a few Valari, including some who had frowned at him earlier, gave small nods of respect. Serenia's expression was unreadable, but Elias thought he saw the faintest hint of surprise in her eyes. That night, alone in his quarters, he thought back on the day. The cultural differences were like invisible walls, but maybe, just maybe, some of those walls could be climbed. And in a high chamber elsewhere in the palace ship, Serenia stood by her crystal window, thinking of the human who had dared to play his strange, warm music in the Hall of Stars. The Valari palace ship drifted in calm orbit above the dying star, but the peace would not last. 3 days after the Hall of Stars celebration, urgent alarms echoed through the crystal halls. The normally calm Valari guards moved with speed, their robes replaced by sleek battle armor. Elias was in his quarters when the door opened without warning. A guard stepped in. "Captain Ward, the princess requests your presence in the war chamber, at once." Elias followed the guard through bright corridors that now felt tense and cold. The usual flowing lights had dimmed to a deep red. The war chamber was unlike the council room. Its center held a huge sphere of shifting light, a three-dimensional map of Valari space. Around it stood nobles, military officers, and Princess Sirenia herself. Her calm eyes turned to Elias. "The Cortec have struck our border worlds," she said. 3 colonies lost, thousands taken." Elias's jaw tightened. "We've faced them before. They're fast, brutal, and they don't negotiate." Jorath spoke sharply from the side. "This is not your war, human. Stay silent." Elias ignored him. "If they're taking prisoners, they'll hit supply routes next. You need patrols in these sectors." He pointed to a section of the glowing map. Several Valari officers frowned at his interruption, but Sirenia's gaze lingered on the points he indicated. "Continue," she said. Elias outlined a quick defense strategy: fast ships, decoy transports, and joint patrols between Valari and human vessels. His voice was steady, but inside he knew it was risky to speak so directly in front of her war council. When he finished, there was silence. Then a tall general said, "Unusual tactics, but it could slow them." Jorath looked displeased, but said nothing more. The meeting ended with orders for immediate patrol deployment. As the others left, Sirenia walked with Elias toward the private corridor. "You speak as if you have faced the Cortec yourself," she said. "I have," Elias replied. 5 years ago, on the Rim, I was part of a defense fleet. We stopped them. But barely. They fight without fear. They burn everything they touch." Her silver-gray eyes studied him. "And yet you survived." Elias allowed a faint smile. "Humans tend to do that." The next day, Elias was given clearance to travel with a Valari patrol fleet to the outer system. The sleek Valari ships were faster and more elegant than any human vessel he had flown on, but their crews were disciplined to the point of stiffness. No one spoke unless necessary. On the 3rd day of patrol, a distress call came in from a Valari, transport carrying medical supplies. The Cortec were closing in. The patrol commander hesitated. "We cannot reach them in time," he said. "Yes, we can," Elias said. "Cut across this asteroid field. We'll shave hours off the route." The commander shook his head. "Too dangerous. Our ships could be damaged." Elias stepped forward. "Then send one ship. I'll go with it." There was a pause. The commander looked at him as if weighing his sanity, but finally nodded. Minutes later, Elias stood on the bridge of a smaller Valari frigate as it plunged into the asteroid field. The ship's pilot guided it between massive tumbling rocks. At the far edge of the field, the transport came into view, and behind it, 3 black spiked Cortec raiders. "Bring us in fast," Elias ordered. "Target their lead ships. Engines!" The Valari crew hesitated at taking orders from a human, but the pilot obeyed. Bright energy beams lanced out, striking the Cortec vessel and sending it spinning. The others broke off to protect it. "Go! Get the transport out! Of here!" Elias shouted. The frigate and the transport sped away, the asteroid shielding them from pursuit. When they reached open space, the Valari captain looked at Elias with something close to respect. "You took a risk," the captain said. "And it worked," Elias replied simply. Back on the palace ship, word of the rescue spread quickly. Valari officers spoke of the humans' boldness. Some still doubted him, but others began to see him differently. That evening, Sirenia sent for him. She met him not in the throne room, but in the garden of silver crystals. The faint light from the dying star cast soft gold across her face. "You risked your life today," she said quietly. Elias shrugged. "The transport had people on board. I couldn't just watch them die." "Many would have," she replied. "Valari commanders value caution above all. To act so quickly, it is not our way." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes, Your Highness, the best way to save lives is to move before the danger can catch you." For a moment she was silent, her gaze fixed on his face. "You have done more than rescue a ship, Elias Ward. You have given some here reason to believe humans might be more than allies of convenience." Elias's heart gave a small, unexpected ache. "And you? Do you believe that?" Her lips parted slightly, but she looked away. "I believe you are. Difficult to ignore." The words hung between them, heavier than they should have been. Later, alone in his quarters, Elias sat by the window again. The dying star pulsed faintly, its light slow and steady. He thought of Sirenia's words, difficult to ignore. Coming from her, that was almost a confession. 8 years of keeping his feelings locked away. And now, for the first time, he felt the faintest chance that she might one day see him as more than an envoy. But there was still the war, and wars had a way of tearing hope apart before it could take root. Far above, in her private chamber, Sirenia stood by her own window, the same starlight brushing her face. She was thinking about the human, about his calm voice in the war chamber, about his daring in the asteroid field, about the way he looked at her without fear. And though she would never admit it aloud, she found herself wondering what else the human envoy might. Reports came in daily. More Valari outposts under attack, human supply convoys destroyed on the edges of Allied space. The Cortec moved like shadows, striking and vanishing before a counterattack could arrive. For Elias Ward, the tension was constant. Every meeting in the war chamber brought news of fresh losses. Even Sirenia, who had always been calm and unreadable, seemed weighed down by the strain. One evening, as Elias prepared to return to his quarters after a long council session, a Valari guard approached. "Captain Ward," the guard said, "Her Highness requests you in her private chamber." Elias paused, his mind catching on the words. The private chamber, not the throne room, not the garden, but the place where only the most trusted were allowed. He followed the guard through winding halls lit by a faint golden glow. The doors they reached were smaller than the Grand Palace gates, but carved with delicate star patterns. The guard stepped aside. "Enter," came Sirenia's voice from inside. Elias stepped through. The room was softly lit, with walls of pale crystal and a single wide window looking out over the dying star. There was no throne, no crown, only Sirenia in a simple silver robe, seated beside a low table with 2 cups of steaming liquid. "Sit," she said. Elias obeyed, lowering himself to the cushion across from her. The air smelled faintly of something, floral, though he couldn't place the scent. "I asked you here," she began, "because I have grown curious about you." He raised an eyebrow. "About me, Your Highness?" She gave the faintest hint of a smile. "Yes, you are not like other humans I have met. You do not flatter endlessly. You speak plainly, even when it risks offense, and yet you seem loyal." Elias let out a soft laugh. "I'd like to think loyalty is something humans are good at." Her silver-gray eyes met his. "I was taught otherwise. Valari children are told that humans shift their alliances like the wind, that they follow only self-interest. Do you still believe that?" Elias asked quietly. She studied him for a long moment. "No," she said at last. "You have shown me that it is not always true. For a time they drank in silence, watching the slow swirl of light from the star outside. Then Sirenia spoke again, more softly. You risked your life for a Valari transport. You spoke in our war chamber without fear. And you remain here even when it would be safer to return to your own people. Elias set his cup down. The warmth of the drink had nothing to do with the heat he felt rising inside him. There's a reason for that, he said. Her gaze sharpened slightly. What reason? He took a slow breath. For years he had kept the words locked away. He had told himself it was impossible, foolish even. But now, with the war pressing on all sides and the future uncertain, holding back felt like a lie. Because I have loved you for years, he said. The words hung in the air between them, quiet but heavy. Sirenia's eyes widened slightly, the first clear crack in her perfect composure. For a moment she said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, a short laugh escaped her. Elias's brow furrowed. You find that amusing? She shook her head, the faintest trace of disbelief still in her expression. Not amusing. Impossible. I was told humans do not love in the way we understand it. That your emotions are brief, fleeting things. They're wrong, Elias said firmly. When humans love, truly love, it's not something that fades in a season. I first saw you 8 years ago, and nothing has changed since. Sirenia studied him as though she were trying to see if his words were real. 8 years? For a Velari, that is a short time. For a human, it is not. It's long enough to know what's in my heart, he said. Silence stretched between them again. Outside the window, the star pulsed faintly, as if it too was holding its breath. Finally, Sirenia spoke, her voice quieter than before. If what you say is true, then you have broken another belief I was taught. You have made me question. Elias leaned forward slightly. Question what? Question whether a human could be more than an ally, whether you could be something else. His heart gave a heavy, steady beat. And do you think I could? Her lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. I think you are not like the others. That much is certain. Jorath's voice called from outside the door, breaking the fragile moment. Your Highness, urgent message from the front lines. Sirenia rose smoothly, her calm mask returning. We will speak again, Captain Ward, soon. Elias stood as well, bowing slightly. I'll hold you to that. As he left the room, his pulse was still quick, his mind replaying her words over and over. And in the quiet after he was gone, Sirenia stood by the window, looking out at the fading light of the star. For the first time in many years, she felt the shape of a new possibility. One that could change not only her life, but the fate of her people. The next morning, the war chamber buzzed with tension. The Cortec were advancing faster than anyone had predicted. Valari fleets were on constant alert, and human advisors were stretched thin. Elias Ward moved through the corridors with careful purpose, his mind still replaying the private moment with Princess Sirenia. Her words from the night before had echoed in his head. You are not like the others. That much is certain. Now, standing among Valari officers, he felt the weight of expectation heavier than ever. Strategy meetings were a constant cycle of maps, fleet positions, and emergency dispatches. But amid the chaos, one thought persisted. The princess's reaction had been more than disbelief. It had been a crack in her carefully maintained composure. Later, a messenger arrived at Elias's quarters. He opened the crystalline envelope and read the words with a rising pulse. Sirenia wanted him in her private chamber again. Immediately, Elias moved swiftly, wondering what she might say this time. The war had pressed her into careful calculation, but now she sought him out. His heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. When he entered her chamber, she was waiting, standing by the panoramic window. The light of distant star clusters bathed her in soft silver, making her seem both otherworldly and familiar. "You are here," she said simply. "I came as soon as I received your message," Elias replied, keeping his voice calm even as he felt its steadiness falter. She gestured for him to sit beside her. "Captain Ward, there is something I must confess." Elias's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes?" Serenia hesitated for a moment, her fingers lightly touching the edge of her robe. "When I first saw you act in the war chamber, when you rescued that transport, I realized that humans are capable of loyalty, courage, and risk in ways I had never expected. And you changed my perception of you personally." Elias felt his chest tighten. "You mean you trust me?" She shook her head, a faint smile, brushing her lips. "Not just trust, something more. I am drawn to you, Elias, more than I should be given our positions, given what the Velari expect of me." He blinked, stunned. You mean that?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I am aware that this will shock the court. Some may call it scandal, others may call it betrayal. But I cannot deny what I feel." The words hit Elias like a wave. For years, he had loved her silently, careful to never let his feelings show, knowing the risk of rejection and political disaster. And now, here she was, offering him a truth that had seemed impossible. "I never expected you," he said softly, "to feel the same." She leaned back slightly, looking out at the starry void beyond. "I never expected it either. But your presence, your courage, your honesty, it has shaken my world." Elias reached for her hand, cautious but firm. "Then let us face it together. Not as human and Velari, not just as diplomat and princess, but as partners, if you will." Her gaze met his, unwavering. "If the Velari will allow it." Before they could speak further, a group of courtiers and nobles arrived at the chamber doors, their expressions a mix of shock and anger. "Your Highness," one of them exclaimed, "what is the meaning of this? Are you seriously considering a human as a bondmate?" Another noble stepped forward, voice sharp. "This is disgraceful! You endanger the throne, the family, and our traditions." Serenia held up her hand, and silence fell. "I am aware of the objections," she said calmly, "but this is my choice. Elias Ward has proven himself as an ally, as a strategist, and as someone who holds my respect and trust. That is more than some Velari nobles have earned in lifetimes." The room erupted into whispers and muttered protests. Elias felt the weight of stares, the sharp eyes of those who would see him fail. But he stood tall, unmoved. One of the generals stepped forward. "If she makes this choice, it will embolden the humans. But will it weaken Velari resolve?" Serenia's eyes were sharp, unwavering. "No. If anything, it strengthens our forces. Elias is not a threat. He is proof that humans are not to be underestimated. And if any of you cannot see that, then perhaps you are the ones who have misjudged the future." The chamber fell silent. Even the most rigid nobles seemed to hesitate, unsure how to respond to a princess who spoke with both authority and heart. After the courtiers left, a quiet tension remained. Serenia turned to Elias. "It will not be easy. Many will resist. But I believe that together, we can show them the strength of unity, human and Velari, side by side." Elias nodded. "Then we will face it together." In the following days, the court's reaction was mixed. Some nobles openly protested, spreading rumors of scandal and betrayal. Others, watching the human's actions on the front lines, began to respect him. During the war, The two of them became a symbol. Human tactics, combined with Valari discipline, gave their forces an edge. Stories of bold maneuvers, rescued transports, and daring strategies spread among both human and Valari soldiers. Sirenia and Elias spent long hours planning, not only battles but also the future they might share. Every shared strategy session, every quiet conversation after a council, every look exchanged in the glow of distant stars drew them closer. And yet, the court continued to whisper. Elias's presence at her side was controversial. His courage was undeniable, but the idea of a human as her partner challenged centuries of Valari tradition. One evening, as the palace ship floated silently above the dying star, Elias and Sirenia stood together in the crystal garden. "You know," Elias said quietly, "we might be the most controversial pair in the galaxy." Sirenia smiled faintly, resting a hand lightly on his arm. "Perhaps. But controversy does not matter when the heart is involved. And perhaps, just perhaps, our people will learn from it." Elias nodded. "Then let's give them a reason to learn." The star outside flared in quiet brilliance, casting golden light over them both. In that glow, the human and the Valari princess found not just partnership, but hope. Hope for victory, hope for unity, and hope for a future that neither could have imagined alone. The war raged on. For weeks, Valari and human fleets had fought side by side, meeting core tech ambushes with strategy, courage, and relentless determination. The combination of Valari discipline and human adaptability proved more effective than anyone had imagined. Captain Elias Ward moved through the bridge of the flagship with calm authority. His human intuition guided decisions that Valari officers might have hesitated over. Every maneuver, every counterattack seemed to turn the tide. Princess Sirenia Valari stood beside him, her eyes sharp as she studied the star maps projected across the room. Together they formed a partnership that was more than strategic. It was personal, a shared trust that strengthened the morale of both fleets. "Elias," she said, pointing to a cluster of Cortex ships closing in on a supply convoy. "We cannot allow them to reach the inner colonies. Any ideas?" He studied the formation. "Divide our forces. Send the fastest ships to block them at the asteroid belt. The rest create a diversion here." He pointed to a narrow corridor between two nebulae. "It's risky, but it's our best chance." Sirenia nodded. "Do it." Orders were transmitted, and the fleets moved into position. The humans and Valari worked seamlessly, their tactics complementing each other. The idea Cortec had not expected the combination of human ingenuity and Valari precision. Their lead ships were struck, their formations disrupted, and one by one the enemy vessels were forced to retreat. Back on the palace ship, the court watched in awe as reports came in. Humans had not only fought alongside Valari, they had saved colonies, preserved resources, and inspired courage. Elias's presence at Sirenia's side had gone from scandalous to heroic in the eyes of many. After the battle, Sirenia called Elias to the upper deck. The stars stretched endlessly above them, the remnants of the dying star glowing faintly in the distance. "You did it," she said quietly. "Not just the fleets, but everything. You've proven what I already knew, that humans are more than their reputation suggests." Elias looked at her, his expression softening. "We did it together. None of this would have been possible without your leadership." She reached out, taking his hand. "I wanted to see for myself. I wanted to know if humans could truly be trusted. And now, you have shown not just trust, but strength, courage, and heart." For a long moment they stood in silence, the galaxy's light washing over them. Then Sirenia spoke, her voice carrying a weight of certainty. "Elias, I choose you. Not only as my ally, not only as my partner in war, but as my bondmate, my chosen companion for life. Elias's heart raced. Serenia, She placed a hand on his cheek, stopping him. No words, just this. In that moment, the palace ship felt alive with possibility. The war was not yet fully over, but the bond between human and Valari had created a symbol stronger than any fleet, a sign that cooperation, trust, and love could change the course of history. The next days were filled with celebrations and cautious optimism. Colonies that had been under threat were being secured, and communication lines opened between human and Valari worlds. The court, once scandalized, now praised Elias for his bravery and intelligence. Even Ambassador Joreth, who had been one of the most critical voices, admitted quietly that the human envoy had proven himself beyond measure. Yet amid the politics and strategy, Elias and Serenia found moments for themselves. Quiet walks in the Crystal Garden, shared strategy sessions turned into conversations about dreams, hopes, and the life they wished to build together. One evening, as the palace ship floated over the reborn light of the star, Serenia leaned against the railing beside Elias. "Do you realize," she said, "that your actions have not only saved lives but also changed how my people see humanity?" Elias smiled faintly. "I suppose that's not a bad outcome." She looked at him seriously. "Not bad? It is extraordinary. Humans have been underestimated for centuries, but now, because of you, they are respected, feared in the right way, and perhaps loved." Elias chuckled softly. "I only acted as any human would. Adapt, survive, and give your word when you make it." Serenia's eyes softened. "And in doing so, you have shown us something remarkable, that humans are capable of more than we imagined, that humans can inspire, protect, and even love as deeply as we do." For Elias, the weight of years of unspoken devotion lifted. He had loved her in silence for so long, but now they were free. Free to act, to stand together, and to shape a future neither of them could have foreseen. Months later, the final battle against the Cortec took place near the outer rim of Valari space. The combined fleets moved with confidence, coordinated by Elias's tactical insight and Serenia's leadership. The Cortec were defeated decisively. Their remnants fled into the void, and peace, fragile but real, settled over the Valari colonies. Victory celebrations filled the palace ship, but the moment Elias treasured most came when Serenia called him to the highest observation deck. "You see what we have achieved?" she asked, her hand in his. "Yes," Elias said, gazing at the stars. "Together." She turned to him, her silver-gray eyes shining. "And together, we will face whatever comes next. Humanity is no longer underestimated. You have not only changed my heart, Elias. You have changed the future of my people." Elias smiled, feeling a deep, steady warmth. "And you've changed mine, Serenia." As the light of the reborn star bathed them both, human and Valari stood side by side, proof that courage, love, and determination could triumph even against the darkest of odds. For the first time, Elias felt that the galaxy was truly theirs to face, together. And in that unity, the legend of a human envoy and a Valari princess was born, inspiring generations to come.